Judgment Night is a 1993 released action thriller directed by Stephen Hopkins.
It stars Emilio Estevez, Stephen Dorff, Cuba Gooding Jr. and Jeremy Piven as four friends who are going to see a boxing match in Chicago. Jeremy Piven's character has managed to get his hands on a sort of luxury RV, so it takes them all on a trip. But unfortunately, the freeway is gridlocked, so he decides to take another route through the rundown area of Chicago. They don't know where the hell they're going. This is before the days of sat-nav. Yeah, they're sort of aimlessly driving around, then they accidentally hit somebody who just suddenly walks out into the road. He's bleeding, so it looks like he's injured. Then they suddenly realise he's actually been shot, and he's got like a bundle of money on him. You know, he's saying, oh, I need to get away, they're going to come for me and things like that. So they're suddenly obviously a bit scared of what the hell's going on. So yeah, it turns out that this guy is like a hood. He sort of works on the street for this crime lord called Fallon, played by Denis Leary. Fallon thinks he's stolen this money from him, so he's after him. Basically, he executes him in front of these four friends. He's obviously not going to leave any witnesses, so the chase is then on as he chases them across this part of the city. The rest of the film essentially is one long foot chase.
I think this film is, for a lot of people, especially people of our generation, this is a film that people will perhaps know for the soundtrack. In this country, this went straight to video, so we never saw this in the cinema. But I came across this via the soundtrack because it is, if you grew up in the 90s listening to either alternative music, metal, rock music, all that kind of stuff, then you knew about this soundtrack because it was just really, really cool. And it did something quite unique for the time, and that was to combine hip-hop artists with heavy metal artists and all alternative music. So you've got people like...
I can hold up the CD case here.
You've got the CD case there. Amazing. I do have it as well somewhere. So you've got Helmet and House of Pain. They have a track on there. Slayer and Ice-T.
Faith No More and Booyah Tribe.
Yeah, Faith No More and the Booyah Tribe, of course. Great band. And then you've got... I think Cypress Hill are on there twice. Cypress Hill do Pearl Jam.
Yeah, they do.
And Sonic Youth as well, they have a track with. And then there's Therapy, randomly, the Irish band Therapy are on there with... who were they on there with?
I can tell you, hold on.
There.
Fatal,
yeah, I not quite know that one. Biohazard, of course, with Onyx. And I think they actually had...
Mudhoney with Sir Mix-a-Lot.
Yeah, what's great about it is they're all great songs. And they're all new songs, so they're new songs by both the guitar band and the hip-hop group. They're not like covers of other songs that they've done. So it's just a really great soundtrack, and it's a soundtrack I still listen to this day. I absolutely love it. And I think
it's kind of nu metal before nu metal was a thing, because obviously nu metal kind of absorbed a bit of sort of rap kind of sensibilities.
It went on. It took further the whole. Obviously Aerosmith and Run DMC did Walk This Way in the end of the 80s. And then around this time, God, when was it? It was 1991. Anthrax and Public Enemy did Bring the Noise. I think that was 91 because that was on their Attack of the Killer Bees record. And then around this time, Rage Against the Machine came out. And in fact, did you know that Rage Against the Machine and Tool recorded a song for this soundtrack?
Did they?
They did. It was called Revolution.
Why is it not on there?
No, it was 14 minutes long. So they.
I want to hear that.
It didn't make the film, and it didn't make the soundtrack. I think it leaked onto the internet. I heard it years and years and years ago. I listened to it again today. Actually, it was on. I found it on YouTube. It's not very good quality, but yeah, it's a really good album. And I think for a long time, the film wasn't a huge success, and it's kind of possibly survived on the back of the album.
Watching the film again, you notice little clips of the songs, but not many of them. I was trying to listen.
No, they're not. No,
they don't really feature that. The one that features the most is the Teenage Fan Club de la Soul song,
yeah,
which
because
opens and closes the film.
It's on the intro, and then it pops up again a few minutes later.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. The Faith No More one is like in it for about 2 seconds.
Oh yeah, you barely hear it. Yeah, so it's like for all that effort putting together that soundtrack,
yeah,
and it's barely featured.
Yeah.
And I think it doesn't really fit.
No.
The end film, I don't think. You would expect a bit more of a bombastic film to go with that soundtrack rather than. The film's not pedestrian, but it's not. It's pretty straight laced. There's not nothing sort of outrageous in there. It's a straightforward action thriller. It doesn't go over the top particularly, I wouldn't say, compared to some action films, and there's not and it plays it pretty straight. There's not a lot of humour in there. It's quite serious in tone a lot of the time. If you'd listened to the soundtrack and not seen the film, you would expect something a lot crazier, I think, from the movie.
Which is not to say the film is bad.
No.
I hadn't seen it for many, many years, and when I watched it again, I recognised it, but I didn't remember much of it, so I don't think I've seen it for a long, long time. But I enjoyed it. I mean, it's a solid little thriller. Doesn't do anything new. The beginning setup's a bit odd. It's a bit kind of it was a little bit unbelievable, I thought. But then when they got to where they were getting to, and with them being chased kind of through these streets of Chicago, it was good, and there were some good tense moments in there. A couple of moments were a little bit edge of your seat type stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely.
What I was really impressed with actually was the cinematography. Actually, the use of colour and light was almost bleeding off the screen. I felt there were some really amazing shots. So I think in America, a lot of these kind of these run down, kind of disenfranchised places seem to be under. So you've got the freeways that go over the top of these cities, and then of course underneath is where it's much, it's much poorer, and so that obviously leads to playing a lot with. It's very dark at times, lots of shadows. It's all set at night, obviously Judgment Night, so it's set at night, and there's lots of people in shadows, but then they also played with, there's lots of shop signs around, so there's lots of colour going on, and he really used that to, I thought, great effect, and I really enjoyed the look of it, and there was some really quite almost gothic feeling to it, one person in light, one person in black, and silhouettes, and I really enjoyed that. So I almost enjoyed the look of it and the technical aspects of the film more than the film itself. And there's also some great kind of uses of close-ups on faces with
There was a couple of instances of that, wasn't there?
There was, with and especially because obviously Denis Leary is in there, and Denis Leary is famous. If you don't know, he was a stand-up comedian as well as being an actor, but he was very, very famous for these rants that he gave, and he would literally be on the screen and it would be a close-up on his face. The director kind of utilises that a little bit. So there's like close-ups on mouths. Because Denis Leary he's a very famous talker. He has that kind of sardonic wittiness with his dialogue, which is maybe not so much in this film, but there's a bit of that going on. Him walking around just talking and making them all a bit on edge with what he's saying.
Yeah, same as you. I hadn't seen it for a long time. I remember parts of it. It doesn't waste any time, getting going. It sets everything up really quick, and the pacing's pretty good. I thought it maybe sagged a little bit at the end. It maybe could have done with sort of, 10-15 minutes being trimmed off. It started to drag a little bit at the end. But apart from that, I thought it was well put together, well edited and everything. It was directed by Stephen Hopkins, who directed Predator 2, and the music for that was done by Alan Silvestri, who's obviously he did Predator 1 as well. So he rejoined Stephen Hopkins for this as well. If you've seen Predator 2, then you'll obviously remember the music, and this sounds almost identical in some parts. He almost plagiarised himself for this. But it's a great score. I think you hear that more than you hear any of the songs on the soundtrack.
You do, yeah. Because in fact, when it started, I was thinking, I wonder how they, because I couldn't remember seeing it. I was thinking, I wonder how they do use the soundtrack on it. And I was kind of more excited. I was excited to see it. But I was also excited to see how they actually used that, because I couldn't remember how they used that famous soundtrack in the film. But you do, you're right. You hear the music, you hear the score a lot more than you hear the songs.
The only time you ever hear them is like on radios in the background and things like that. The only one you don't hear like that is like over the top of the film is that Teenage Fan Club De La Soul one. All the others are like within the film. They're playing on car stereos or whatever.
Yeah, you'd hear bits of. I remember hearing the Slayer Ice-T one. I think that's playing when they're about to go into. There's this great scene with an apartment, and they go up through the apartment, and as they're going to the apartment, there's some kids, and they're listening to that on a stereo.
Just talking about that scene in the apartment building, just an honourable mention for another cast member was Galen Gorg. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Probably most famous. I mean, she's done lots of roles over the year, but maybe most famous on the screen playing Angie in RoboCop 2. But she passed away a few weeks ago. At quite a young age. So just honourable mention for her there.
There's a few other noticeable faces in there as well. So you've got Denis. So in the kind of the gang, the henchmen that are following these guys, Denis Leary is clearly like the kingpin, the boss of them all. So there's one guy, Peter Green, who I was like, I know that face. He was in Mask, wasn't he?
I know him from Usual Suspects and Pulp Fiction. He's Zed in Pulp Fiction.
Oh, of course he is. Yeah, of course he is. I think he was in Mask as well. He's the bad guy in Jim Carrey's Mask film.
The Mask. Yeah.
The
I was
Mask.
thinking of
The Mask. Yeah.
I was thinking of the Eric Stoltz one. But yeah, The Mask.
The Mask. Sorry, yeah.
The Eric Stoltz one's just Mask, isn't it?
It is. You're right. Yeah, not. Yeah.
No, you're right. Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he had a sort of quite a. Yeah, he was in. Yeah, so Judgment Night, Pulp Fiction, The Mask, Usual Suspects, all quite close together.
All quite close. Yeah, exactly. But he's great, and he's good in this as well. I mean, the bad guys in these kind of films tend not to have a lot to do other than strut their muscles and shoot guns. But he has a few lines, and he's quite good. I think he's quite, good character actor. He's done lots of really interesting stuff over the years. Then there's two others. One of them I didn't recognise, but one of them was actually a guy called Eric Schroeder, who was actually Everlast from the House of Pain.
Right, yeah.
He's, the shaven-headed one. And obviously House of Pain is on the soundtrack. But the other link, of course, is that Denis Leary famously on the introduction of the music video for House of Pain's Shamrocks and Shenanigans. And he does that kind of, he's ranting about something. But he doesn't have a lot to do other than look menacing in this. It's a great kind of 90s... I mean, I've read a few things today that suggest that it's become kind of a cult film. And I suppose, in a way, that soundtrack has made it become a cult film. I did read that this went through a lot of rewrites. So I think the idea came out in the end of the 80s, and apparently it was a lot darker and a lot grittier than what actually was filmed and put out there. And then it went through many different rewrites, and I think by the time Stephen Hopkins came on board, I mean, I think at one point it was set in LA with like motorcycle gangs, and there were like motorcycle chases over rooftops. So it clearly went through a lot of different variations before they landed on what it landed on. And I think possibly actually it could have maybe been a lot darker and a lot more violent. I mean, this is the same year, well, this is the year before Pulp Fiction comes out, and obviously Reservoir Dogs was a couple of years beforehand. So we were in that period of getting quite violent films. And perhaps maybe this one, it goes to some quite dark places, but it doesn't really... it goes there visually, but it doesn't go there in plot. And maybe it could have, maybe had it been, and in fact, if you look at the soundtrack, those bands, I mean, they're all, the metal and the hip hop artists. I mean, both those types of music are known for their kind of violent imagery and their violent lyrics. And perhaps had the film been edgier and more violent and darker, maybe it would have. Do you know what I mean? Maybe it would have survived the test of time a little bit more than it has done. Because I think it's quite... Although it's a solid little action film, I think it's quite light at times. A bit too light. The ending's kind of... the ending's like every other film out there.
Yeah.
It's that same kind of fight scene at the end that you know it's coming and you know what's going to happen at the end of it. And had it been a lot edgier and a lot darker, maybe it would have survived a little bit longer. But... it's enjoyable. It's well put together. Like I said, I think the cinematography is great and the look of it and the visuals are really good. But yeah, I mean, take it or leave it. But we both took it because you picked it up yesterday.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So we got the same one, haven't we?
We have
the HMV Premium one. I mean, I think it's been released by Warner on the Warner Archive label in the US, which I've been meaning to pick up for ages and just never got around to it. And then they chucked it out in HMV. So I thought, yep, I'll have a bit of that. And of course, it's on at the moment. They've got their £15 offer on these premium edition.
I mean, I know that the premium collection. They've got some great films in their collections, and they're just like, I mean, it is a bit of a lackluster release.
There's nothing on it apart from the film. No. Just... I mean, that's the same on the US disc, to be honest.
Right.
It's a shame because it would be good to to have some sort of behind the scenes. I mean, there must be deleted scenes or something. I mean, or just somebody talking about the soundtrack, or maybe, you know, because a couple of the songs came out as singles, didn't they? So maybe the music videos, or I don't know, something.
The soundtrack is what it's known for. It would be quite nice to maybe have, you know, something about the soundtrack. There's no mention on here at all about its soundtrack.
No.
And that's clearly what it's known for. And to have, you know, it'd be quite interesting to do, because in fact I found an interview with Stephen Hopkins that it was they did a 25-year showing. They all went back to Chicago, and they showed it at, I think, the theatre that maybe it was first released in. And there's an interview with Stephen Hopkins online, which is really interesting because he really goes quite in depth with talking about it. And he actually spoke, because they asked him about the soundtrack, and he said that wasn't his idea. There was a guy called, I think, Happy Walters, is like one of the sound guys on there, and it was his idea to do that soundtrack. And he said, Stephen Hopkins said, he actually went into some of the recording of these songs, and he says that it was like a crazy trip seeing these bands perform, which obviously it would have been. I mean, you know, being there with, you know, Booyard Tribe and Faith No More rocking out and crazy stuff like that, and Slayer and Ice-T and everything must have been crazy. So yeah, it would have been nice to see like maybe a documentary on the soundtrack. It's not something we often see, documentaries on soundtracks, talking to those bands and how they, you know, what it was like working with each other would have been. I personally would have been very interested in. So yeah, a bit of a lackluster release, but it's nice that it's out there, and the HMV Premium Collection have got some really good stuff on there.
You do get a poster and some postcards, so that's always
you
nice.
do. The postcards I thought were also a bit lackluster, but
they were. I took them out of the cellophane. I was like, oh, because the first one is obviously the poster.
Yeah.
And then and then they're just sort of fuzzy.
They're fuzzy,
stills.
kind of flimsy. Yeah. What have we got here? We've got they're just kind of a bit. It's just they're just scenes from the film.
Yeah, not particularly great quality and not particularly exciting images.
Not great, no. And the poster's just the cover, and yeah. So I mean, in fact, the picture on the CD cover is almost better. I'd rather have a poster of that, to be honest.
Yeah.
So that was Judgment Night, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments below.
Hit the subscribe button there, and don't forget to push that bell for notifications. There's other videos to check out over here. Come and find us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and join us next week for another video.